Letters from the front. Mr. J. Hannon is in receipt of a letter from Corporal A. Hughes of Castlemaine, from which we extract the following. The letter was written at Bloemfontein on April the 11th, 1900. I had just read your letter and one from my father on the morning of our fight at Hobkirk's farm, when the order came from Captain McKerney to retire. We were relieved for an hour by a half company of the Wiltshire Regiment. There were only 50 of us there, you know, and we were to go back and get a biscuit, a man, and a drink of water. Major Eddie said, "There is nothing for your breakfast, boys, but you will have a fine dinner." We did. He got more than he could digest, poor chap. All this time the Boer guns were pitching just over the rocks which sheltered us and ploughing up the ground in front. Well, we retired in single file along a track like a goat track, and as the first man came into view of the Boers, a bullet whizzed over his shoulder and struck just in front of him. The next man to came on about 5 yards behind. Hagen was his name, and those waiting with our horses saw him suddenly pitch forward, shot through the ankle. This was pretty warm, seeing there were 35 more of us to come through, but luckily, although the Boer big guns started operations on us also, nobody else was hit. We got back to the horses and found that 20 of them had been killed by stray bullets, and then we got our water bottles full and went to get our biscuit. Alas, too late. That biscuit was not to be eaten by us. We got the order to stand to our horses at once, as the Wilts had been forced to retire, and we were ordered to cover their retreat. We galloped off in parties of about a dozen. I myself was with poor Alex Ross of Castlemaine and Lieutenant Powell. There were 10 of us. Altogether, we sailed up to the edge of the kopje and left our horses with the men told off for that purpose. Got a bit further forward and had some good shooting for about half an hour, but there were too many Boers. We had not been there 10 minutes when Alex Ross was shot. The next thing, the Boers on a little kopje about 300 yards to the front hoisted the white flag, and Lieutenant Powell, much against our wishes, got up to have a look at it, and it had not been laid down again before he too was shot. The bullets at this time were coming thick and fast from the front, but we did not mind that so much. But then a small party of mounted rifles on our left found it too hot for them and retired, leaving most of their number behind them. The Boers got on our flank, and when the bullets began to come on the cross as well as from the front, we thought it was time to get. So we jumped up, put down our heads and ran for our horses. As we were mounting, the Boers came over the edge of the kopje and banged away at us, but they could not hit us when we got moving. When we got a quarter of a mile away, Lance Corporal Ordish rode up to me and reminded me that Major Eddie, or Captain McKerney, did not know that we had to retire, so we turned our horses and galloped round to where Major Eddie was. He would not believe that the situation was so serious and would not retire, although we impressed it on him strongly. But when a couple of the men who were with him were shot from behind while firing to the front, he looked round and said, "By Jove, this is a bit too hot," and gave the order to retire. As soon as he got on his feet, he dropped dead, with a bullet through the head. We glanced at him to see if we could do anything for him, but seeing he was perfectly dead, we put down our heads and went hard for the horses, none too soon, for the bullets had got in amongst them, and some had stampeded. Anyhow, I got my mount and had another Melbourne Cup sprint with bullets instead of a whip. It is surprising how you can get the pace out of a horse at a time like that. We met a troop of lancers about half a mile who had been waiting for the Boers to come into open ground where they could get at them, but they did not come, so we hung about giving fellows a lift who were running out under fire with no horses. Well, we all collected at Mader's farm about 2 miles away, that is all that were left, and we received orders to retire to Rensburg straight away without a spell, with only a stiff nip of rum to fortify us and a hard biscuit. We started on this 10-mile journey, which I had the hard luck to get the baggage guard, and was jogging along on my horse, which was also dead beat and falling asleep as I went along. 2 wagons broke down, and I did not get to Rensburg till sunrise next morning. By the time I watered and fed my horse and reported the baggage all right, it was dinner time, and at 4 in the afternoon I was on the column to Arundel, the first place where we could make a stand. And all that night I was advance guard, which means climbing over koppies on horseback and looking if there were any of the enemy about. I was fully dead crook when I got to Arundel, and when the rest of my company came, I went to the doctor for a tonic to brace me up. He took my temperature, examined me, told me I had fever, and put me in the hospital. And next morning I was on the route for Cape Town with typhoid or enteric fever, as they call it here. I was in the hospital till the 31st of March from the 13th of February, and then came up and joined my company. They would not let me write or give me any letters till I was better, so they did not know where I was at the front. A promotion list came out, and of course I missed my chance in it, but I am promised that my name will be in the next list. I am all right now, and with the rest of the fellows am at Bloemfontein. All the colonial contingents are now the Colonial Brigade under Major General Hutton, who used to be in New South Wales, but of course we do not know what the next move will be. Here I am in Creswick today. It's a nice Sunday. Felt like a bit of a drive. Creswick's not far from Ballarat, so this is all old gold mining towns. A bit different to where I live, insofar as there's a lot of forest around here. So I came across this little fountain. There's a cenotaph there for the World Wars, the big ones. I thought this might be an older monument to the Boers, but no markings. But I did find this garden bed. That's interesting, isn't it? But we're not at Albert Street, we're still looking, so bear with me. I'll get back to you. And another thing that Creswick is quite proud of is its connection to the artist Norman Lindsay, Australian artist. I don't know too much about him, but they used to, around about 1900, have parties up here with people dressed as fairies, elves, classical Greek. And they were quite a flamboyant, trippy type of people, my sort of people. So, yeah, 70 Albert Street. I should have guessed. The honour board is going to be in the town hall like it was in Denali. And that is the town hall of Creswick at the moment. As you can see, under intense renovation or restoration. And there's no way I'm going to get in there today. I should have known. Oh well. Maybe in a while when I come through again and the town hall is open, we can get in and have a look, but that's okay. Next destination will be Ballarat. Because there wasn't much to see in Creswick, I thought as a little bonus I might show you the Queen's scarf. Do you remember the episode in Narandera? There was a soldier called De Freya that received the Queen's scarf, and I was quite curious what this scarf might look like and what happened to it. Where is it now? Queen Victoria crocheted this scarf. She stitched her initials, VRI, Victoria Regina et Imperatrix, Queen and Empress Victoria, onto the wool and gold thread. Description of the scarf. Khaki, woolen, crocheted scarf with a fringe at each end. Width, 16 centimetres. Width is uneven, and although the number of repeats per row should be 6, this is not always the case. Length, including fringe, 183 centimetres. Queen Victoria's eyesight was poor when she made the scarves. Her granddaughter-in-law, the future Queen Mary, then Duchess of York, recalled having to unpick rows to correct the stitching. The history and summary of the scarf. Alfred Henry de Frere was born in Victoria on the 20th of September 1871. He was educated in Melbourne at Brighton Grammar School from 1884 to 1889. He worked on his uncle's property in Queensland and then at Narrandera in New South Wales before enlisting in the 1st New South Wales Mounted Rifles for service in the Boer War. 103 Private de Frere was assigned to C Squadron. In South Africa, he saw action at Poplar Grove, Driefontein, Karee Siding, Vet River, Sant River, Pretoria and Diamond Hill. He was awarded the Queen's Scarf for bravery for an action which took place on the 11th of April 1900. The action was described in detail by Captain Hillard, commander of C Squadron, and printed in the Sydney Mail on the 22nd of September 1900. Quote, when the regiment was on outpost duty near Karee Siding near Bloemfontein, a reconnoitring patrol was sent out early in the morning in charge of Captain Legg. When approaching a farmhouse flying the white flag, every precaution was taken, but seeing no one was about, the men, numbering about 12, rode within the stone fence enclosure when they were immediately fired upon by a party of Boers concealed in a donga on the veld. The gateway was only 150 yards from the farmhouse, but de Frere dismounted, shook Private Clark into a semi-conscious state and mounted again, got Private Clark up behind him and finally out of danger. Private de Frere was exposed to a heavy fire from both quarters previously mentioned. 5 months later, de Frere was invalided to Australia after suffering from enteric fever and pneumonia. He arrived in Sydney on the 17th of September 1900 and was discharged from service 3 days later. He later rejoined the New South Wales military forces and was commissioned a second lieutenant. In the last year of her life, Queen Victoria crocheted 8 scarves from deep gold Berlin wool. In a corner of each of the scarves she embroidered the royal cipher VRI in red silk thread. The first 4 had been completed by April 1900. It was believed that Queen Victoria intended to present her scarves to soldiers for gallant conduct in the field. However, she died before she could do so. Of the 8 scarves made, 4 were intended for British soldiers and the other 4 were to go to men serving in the colonial forces. 4 distinguished private soldiers from Australia, Canada, New Zealand and South Africa were selected. The other 4 recipients were soldiers of the 1st Brigade, 2nd British Division. Some of the recipients of the Queen's Scarf later claimed it was of equal standing to the Victoria Cross, although this was not the case, nor were they entitled to use QS, Queen's Scarf, as a post nominal. In May 1901, His Royal Highness the Duke of York, the future King George V, visited Australia. He presented de Frere with his scarf at a military review in Centennial Park, Sydney. The length of the scarf lent itself to being worn in the same way as a sergeant's traditional sash, over the right shoulder with the fringed ends secured over the left hip. De Frere was photographed wearing the scarf on 2 separate occasions, once with the scarf over his right shoulder and once with it over his left shoulder. From 1902, having noticed a serious depletion of cattle numbers while he was in South Africa, de Frere organised and accompanied a number of shipments of well-bred Australian cattle to South Africa. He subsequently married and settled there. De Frere enlisted with the South African Special Service Company during the First World War, serving as a major in Southwest and East Africa. As a result of this service, he was made an officer of the Order of the British Empire early in 1919. De Frere later moved to Tanganyika, now Tanzania, where he died in 1940. He was buried with military honours at Old Shinyanga in the Lake Province.